Hello, hello, hello to a long overdue new episode of Knitting Between the Lines. I have tried to film this new episode for almost 2 months now, and it's just not been possible. So I'm really sorry. But hi, welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Mia. I live in Western North Carolina where I am filming this. I'm a knitter, I'm a crocheter, I'm a library graduate student, aspiring librarian, and I like to share online my current works in progress, my current finished objects, and my current reads as well. And I usually start off these episodes by sharing what I'm drinking in terms of a cup of tea. However, I am not drinking tea today. I'm drinking water because I actually hosted family over this afternoon for like a really nice summer tea, and I had a lot of tea, so I need to rehydrate, so I'm drinking water. But yeah, so today's episode is very long overdue. I do apologize. The end of April for me, when I, was maybe going to film this, was nuts because we were traveling. We were out of town for a wedding. I was wrapping up my semester with school. Work started to pick up. And then pretty much for the first half of May, honestly, the majority of May, I was just exhausted. I was just recovering. And because I was out of school, I had plans like every weekend. So I was just tired and had plans and just stayed tired. And then last weekend, the first weekend of June, I was like, I'm going to film this podcast episode. I'm going to get it up the first Sunday. It's going to be great. And then Friday night, I burned my hand. It looked a lot worse. My hand was a lot worse. This is like what remains. And I was not going to be able to film a podcast episode. So here I am, very late filming this for you, but we have a lot of fun stuff, a lot of fun updates, personal and knit-wise, and yeah, I'm not gonna talk anymore. We're gonna jump right into finished objects. Before we do that though, I did want to talk about what I'm wearing. This is not a recent finished object, but this is the Corinne Cardi from Knit Collage. I knit it in the spring make-along last year, knit and crocheted it because it's granny squares and then knit sleeves, and I love it. I've been trying to wear it more. It's a little chilly in my house. It's warm outside, but it's a little chilly in the house, mainly because I was doing so much this morning to prepare for tea, and I got hot, and I'm wearing a tank top, or a dress that is spaghetti straps, so I threw this on to stay warm, and I thought it would be nice for this episode. All right, so finished objects from April. So we're throwing it way back to April. So I guess I should start by saying, if you watched the last episode, I was working on another So Summer shirt with my leftover yarn from my Autumn in New York colorway from Sewrella yarn, and I was working on, I think it was the hold up, I have it right here, the Kelly crew neck. Yeah, I had leftover yarn and I was working on a So Summer shirt with it. I frogged that. Completely frogged it, ripped the whole thing back. My stitch count was so off, I don't know what happened. And honestly, after just knitting a sweater with that yarn, or crocheting a sweater with that yarn, I was kind of tired of looking at the yarn. So that yarn is on hold. Okay, next. So I crocheted a little something just off the top of my head in April. It was like a weekend project. I think it was towards the beginning of April, because we've had a tablecloth on our table for the last like 6 months. And I was kind of tired of the tablecloth, and we have a beautiful wooden table in the kitchen that the tablecloth was on. And I'm like, I want to display the wood. I feel like the tablecloth makes the kitchen seem smaller because it's a small kitchen. So I was like, maybe I can crochet up a table runner with some scrap yarn I have. So that's what I did. I crocheted a table runner, and I think I included some B-roll clip of it at the beginning of this episode. I'm trying a couple things different with this episode. If you notice anything different, they worked. If you didn't notice anything different, they didn't work. So yeah, I just crocheted this table runner with leftover Purl Soho linen quill. I believe, yeah, this is Honey Rose is the color. And I just did a quick, just off the top of my head, just chained an X amount of stitches, and then just did a double crochet, chain one, skip stitch, double crochet, chain one, skip stitch. So just a very simple, kind of mindless pattern. And then I blocked it, and it grew a lot because it's linen quill. and it has worked lovely as a table runner. So that was just a weekend project. I've been doing more kind of weekend-ish projects, I guess. So that was nice, like just mindless projects. There was a second weekend project that I did at the beginning of May. I'm going kind of a little out of order with like start times with these. They're gonna overlap a bit. But there's another weekend project that I started at the beginning of May when Sewrella Yarn posted a new spring pattern, and it was for this Écharpe kerchief, and it was something I've been wanting to make for a long time. It's very similar to the Sophie scarf, I believe, that's really popular and that I kind of want to make myself, except it's a smaller version. It can just be used as a kerchief or tied in your hair. And I was like, oh, this is perfect for just some scrap yarn. So I made this, I believe it is called the Écharpe kerchief. It's available on Sewrella Yarn's website. The designer is Hannah Sandler. And I've mainly been wearing it to work just like this, honestly with a knot a little lower, but it's going to be out of frame. I haven't worn it in my hair yet, but I really love it. It's very versatile. Cute. It's very versatile. It was a really quick weekend project. I used scrap yarn. This is Bumblebee Acres Downtstairs from their Downton Abbey colorway collection that I bought years ago. And it's just, the lighting's a little off because it's evening here, but it's just this beautiful, slightly variegated green, and I love it. And it was very quick. The pattern itself was pretty easy to memorize after a couple repeats. This would make a great gift. So I think I might make some gifts with this, and it's also like a yarn like stash buster too. Is that the term? Stash buster? I don't know. But yeah, so I really loved this. It was very fun. And I kind of went on a movie binge when I worked on this and when I worked on the Table Runner. The Table Runner, I watched a bunch of 80s movies. With this, I watched Lord of the Rings. I'm 26 years old, and I have never watched Lord of the Rings from beginning to end. I'm a huge fantasy lover. I loved Game of Thrones, you know, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. I grew up reading those books, not Game of Thrones, but, you know, the young adult children's fantasy, and then, you know, got into Game of Thrones, and I was never able to watch Lord of the Rings for some reason. And I think it was just too slow, and the movies are so long, even the theatrical versions. So I decided, you know what, I have a project that I'm pretty invested in. Like I was going on this project. I think it was around this time, beginning of May, where I actually had to put myself on a knitting hold for a couple of days because I was having wrist pain. Like I was going so hard with knitting. It was the first few weeks of freedom after spring semester ending, so I was doing a lot of knitting. Anyway, so I watched the entirety of the first 3 Lord of the Rings, the like canon trilogy, while working on this. I think I finished it while I was watching them because they're long movies and this was a short project, but got really into Lord of the Rings. And we're gonna get more into that at the end of this episode when we get into reads. But yeah, so it's funny how knits or just projects in general are often, you have memories associated with them if you watch something or listen to something, or even when you're just making it, like where you are in life or whatever you're doing, you have those memories attached to it. And that's one thing I really love about handcrafting stuff, is the memories just kind of attached. And Lord of the Rings will be forever associated with this Écharpe kerchief, even though when I first started knitting it, I watched The House Bunny. 2 entirely different movies. But that was finished, I believe, at the beginning of May. My next finished object was the Tip Top tank. So in between last episode and this one, I mentioned I had yarn coming in that I pre-ordered from the Sewrella Disneyland collection, and I was really excited about it, and I was gonna do the Tip Top tank with it. Well, I finished it. And this was superwash yarn. I believe it was the last episode. I went on a rant about blocking with superwash yarn, and this turned out beautifully. So I'm very happy. So here is my Tip Top tank. I'm sorry I'm not wearing it. Again, it's chilly in my house today, but here it is. in all its glory. Give you some like detailed, can you even see that? Some detailed shots there. The side, oh, the lighting is gonna like not, there we go. Some side detail there. It is stunning. This is in the colorway Carousel, I believe. It's Sewrella's classic sport weight in Carousel, part of her Disneyland collection. I love it. It reminds me of cotton candy. Truly, but it also has very subtle 4th of July vibes. There's really no red in it. It's more just like different shades of pink, but some of the pinks are almost red, and the purples kind of look blue, and the blues are blue, and so it's very subtle 4th of July vibes. So might be wearing that on the 4th. Couple notes, I did make a size smaller, so I made a size large, and it worked out great. However, I didn't block it for very long. I did wet block it for maybe 3 minutes. So it didn't bloom as much as it probably was capable of, but it turned out perfect with just the right amount of positive ease that I was kind of going for. I posted a picture on my Instagram, and I think I'm gonna make that picture the like screen cap for this video. And I also knit the straps much smaller than the pattern called for. This is a free pattern on Ravelry, so I feel a little more comfortable telling you more of my personal specs, but I think for the size large, you're supposed to knit these 24 centimeters from the front and back separating, and I only did 20 centimeters. I originally did 22, tried it on, and I just have very sloped shoulders. Everything falls off my shoulders. So I knew they were gonna have to go shorter, especially with blocking it, and of course with wear is gonna stretch out. So I did 20 centimeters, and it turned out pretty good. And it stays on my shoulders pretty well, especially when I wear a bra under it. That bra strap kind of catches the shoulder straps, but very, very cute. I love it. And that was like my bigger project, even though it took me like only 2 weeks to complete, because again, I was knitting furiously on it. Like that was I was very monogamous. A lot of these projects, except this next one, I was very monogamously knitting. They were the only thing I was working on in that time or a few days or whatever. So my last finished object, I finished this last week. So I burned myself, I guess 8 days ago, so on Friday. And then I finished these on Sunday. So I didn't knit it on Saturday. And then Sunday night, I was like, I think I can get away with some light knitting. And then I was like, let me finish some socks. So I finished my Sakura socks by Bloom and Create. Of course, they are stunning. I'm also calling them my DC socks because at the end of April, like I mentioned earlier, my partner and I traveled up to DC for a wedding. One of my childhood best friends lives up there, and he got married. And I was like, I'm going to make a pair of Sakura socks. These were released, I believe, last fall. I'm gonna make these while we drive up to DC, because we drove, and from here it's about a 7-ish hour drive. So I worked on these. I pretty much almost finished the first sock in that trip alone, just on the road, because he did the majority of the driving. And then I kind of put them on hold because I started working on my Tip Top tank. The yarn came in while we were in DC, and I did the Écharpe kerchief, and I took a knitting break, and I was like playing a little more on my Nintendo Switch just to change it up. And then I finally finished these at the beginning of June. So they took me a little longer, but they were kind of just my side project for quite a while. But they are absolutely stunning, and the lighting is gonna kill me, but I did get some good pictures of them earlier, so you can find those on my Instagram, or you can look on my Ravelry, which is linked below. Everything that I mention in these videos, by the way, I feel like I don't say this enough in my podcast episodes, they're all down below in the description. Links to patterns, oftentimes links to yarn, things like that, links to books on Goodreads, you know, etc. So the colors for these socks that I made, the main color I believe is Malabrigo. Yes, it's Malabrigo Ultimate Sock in the colorway Peggy. It's a very light purple, almost what do we call this, a lavender? It's a very light purple. And then the contrast color, I'm actually not sure. It's just a cream. I received it in my La Mercerie Christmas sock swap exchange. My partner sent me a bunch of mini skeins, and this was one of them. And so that is the contrast color there. And they are just stunning. I thought originally I was going to gift these. 'Tis not the case. They're just too beautiful for words. They're just so stunning. Like the perfect spring sock. I just love them so much. So that is my most recently finished sock project. And that's it for finished objects. In terms of current projects, I only have one whip right now. I'm kind of taking it slow. Again, just like monogamously knitting. And it's something that I saw a couple weeks ago. I think it was only published a couple weeks ago. And I was like, I have to make that. So here I am making it. And this is the Flurry Berets by Claire Walls on Ravelry. And I'm pretty much done with the crown. It's really hard to see on the needles, but it's a gorgeous kind of cabled pattern. There you go. That resembles leaves. So down here is like the tip of the leaf, right? Or petal, more likely. I've been thinking of them as leaves, but they're more likely just supposed to be a flower, petals. And then some baubles, just absolutely stunning. So I'm done with the actual cable work. Now I'm just knitting on it until the decreases and the brim of the hat. My computer just timed out on me. Sorry, pause, I'm back. Technical difficulties. But yeah, this is the Flurry Beret by Claire Walls on Ravelry. I'm using the suggested yarn, which is the De Rerum Natura Ulysse. I'm absolutely butchering that. In Argile is the colorway. Here's the information. I got it off of La Mercerie's website. Words. And this is in Argyle. And she actually released this pattern with a sister pattern that is, if you're not into berets, is a beanie with the same cable work. And because this yarn was relatively affordable, I went ahead and ordered 2 skeins of it because they're each just like, it requires 50 grams of yarn to do the beanie too. And I'll show you that in a few minutes. But yeah, here's the beret. I did learn a couple new tricks with it. I'd never done I-cord before. I don't know why I-cord had always scared me. I always thought it was really hard for some reason. So we did an I-cord cigarette here and it was very simple. I'll also do the I-cord bind off that it calls for at the end. So I'll have to learn that. And I also learned cabling techniques without needing a cable needle. I have always used a cable needle. I enjoy cabling. I enjoy using a cable needle. I feel like I'm one of the few knitters that does. And I did this without using a cable needle. So learned some new techniques there. And I had to relearn how to do bobble stitch because it had been so long since I knit a bobble stitch. It's like been years. Like I think probably the last bobble stitch I did with knitting was like the bobble shawl by Andrea Mowry that I knit in like 2018. So it had been a very long time. And that is it. So that is my only whip at the moment. I'm just trying to, I kind of want to finish it up to just be able to work on something new. We'll talk about plans, but also be able to wear it before it gets too terribly hot here, which it's already getting kind of warm. So not sure about that. So before I get into plans with knitting, I want to show you some new yarn. So like I mentioned, with the Flurry Beret, there is a sister pattern by Claire Walls. That is the Florence hat. You can buy them bundled and get a discount on Ravelry, by the way. So I went ahead and bought a second color of the same yarn for the hat. And here it is. It is so pretty. It's a stunning green. And this is in Genet, G-E-N-E-T. And this is what I'm gonna do the beanie with. Although I am very tempted to make another beret. But I think we're gonna reserve this for the beanie because it's a nice fall color. And the beret is like a nice spring color. So then we have one for each season. I also got some yarn. While we were in DC, we visited a yarn store, and I am blanking on the name of it, so I will include that information in the description. But we visited a yarn store that Emma Janet of Bloom and Create suggested for me to visit, and I picked up some yarn there. This is King Fiber, and the colorway is the super soft sock, and the colorway is in Monarch, and it is just so pretty with the oranges, and I love it. And obviously gonna make probably some socks with this. I went to the yarn store. First of all, we went on the day we did DC, because we actually stayed outside of DC, and we had walked at that point like 10 miles that day. And we took the metro to go to the yarn shop, walked a little ways there. We were exhausted. The yarn shop was closing like within the hour. I had no plans of what I was gonna buy, no thought to it, because the trip had been so quick and had been filled with so many activities that I just hadn't even given a thought to what I was gonna get at the yarn shop, because it wasn't even decided we were gonna do the yarn shop till last minute. So I didn't really know what to get. I had a freak moment. There had a bunch of really beautiful yarns and a bunch of yarns that I'd heard of before, including King Fiber, and just, you know, I've never bought or used before, and got this. I did want to like find some locally dyed yarn if they had any there. I don't remember if they had any. I don't think they did, or at least they didn't have a huge selection of locally dyed yarn, because that's usually my preference when I visit a yarn store out of town. But this was stunning, and so I got it. And so I might do a pair of Hermione's everyday socks with it. I might do like maybe a cabled pair of socks or something like that. Not quite sure yet, and I'm not quite sure if this is going to be a sock project that I keep or give away, so it's all up in the air. But it's a beautiful, beautiful yarn, and I'm very excited about it. So as for knitting, summer knitting plans, I'm trying to be economically minded about my knitting decisions this summer. I don't want to spend a whole lot of money on yarn, so I'm gonna try to use what I have. For instance, I still have the entire like 3 skeins of Autumn in New York left, so I'm probably gonna make some kind of t-shirt with it in a pattern that calls for sport weight yarn. I'm thinking, did I include it in my notes? No, I didn't, but I'm thinking like maybe of doing, I think the Rift shirts. It's pretty popular in that, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm obviously gonna work on the Florence hat at some point. I'm gonna continue maybe working on my northeasterly blanket. I didn't show you it in this video because I have not touched it in months, which is how it goes. I also have the Chelsea toque right now in my queue, or in my favorites on Ravelry. It's one I've had my eye on for months. It looks so much fun to knit, and I was thinking about knitting one either for myself or for a friend. And oh, the other thing that I'm wanting to make is the vest #1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I had been wanting to make a vest for quite a while, something that I can layer and wear during different seasons and wear to work really easily. And it just looks like a really nice worsted weight vest, quick, easy to knit. I found the yarn that I would use for it on Knit Collage, so inexpensive in terms of material. And yeah, so I'm eyeing that as well. So I have quite a list. We'll see what actually gets done. But I believe that wraps up the knitting portion of this episode. So we're going to move on to reading, and I have a lot of finished reads to talk about. I'm not going to talk too terribly long about them just for the sake of time, but I do always post a little book review in my Instagram stories when I finish a book. So if you want like more in-depth reviews in terms of like how many stars do I rate this, go follow me on Instagram. I'll include that below as well. So the first book that I finished was The Little Book of Hygge by Mike Viking. If you remember at the beginning of this year, I read My Hygge Home. So I kind of read these out of order because this is his first book, and I really liked it. It was a nice morning kind of coffee table book, simple read. It includes a little more background on Hygge, but not a whole lot that I didn't already know from My Hygge Home. But it does include recipes and like kind of ideas to incorporate Hygge into your life. and during different seasons as well, which I really liked because Hygge is often associated with winter, and he's like, well, here's how you can do it in fall, summer, and spring. It also included some word breakdowns, like just, yeah, really interesting. So how, like, it had linguistics in it. It was a very interesting book, but it was a very quick read as well, so very enjoyable if that is something that interests you. I also finished Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I was reading that on my Kindle and loved it. Loved it. It's the sequel to The Ninth House, and if you recognize Leigh Bardugo's name, yeah, Bardugo. I always feel like I'm pronouncing her last name wrong, but if you recognize her name, she wrote the Grisha trilogy, Six of Crows, all those books. But Ninth House and Hellbent are definitely more adult fantasy versus young adult. It was so good. I thought it was going to be more of like a Dante's Inferno kind of plot, but it wasn't. So that was surprisingly good. I think it wasn't like a rehash on an old story that we all know. Picked up great from the first book. Finished on a cliffhanger, just like the first book. Really love the character development that she does, and the plot development is just really, really great. So I really enjoyed it. I devoured it. I was really sad when I finished it, and I hope I don't have to wait another 2 years for another book, but she can take all the time she needs because she crafts beautiful books. Then I read, finally, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is one that's been on my to be read for probably since like 2020. When did this book come out? It's been on my TBR since this book came out. 2020. Okay. I read it. I received it for Christmas this year, and I finally read it. I enjoyed it. It was good. I understand the hype. It was good. I liked it. It was a good concept. My only critique on it is I felt like it was a little too dismissive to mental health and struggles with depression specifically. And then I read a little bit more about Matt Haig in the back of the book, staring you down. Not quite as traumatizing as when I read Spare. But he also read a memoir called, or he wrote a memoir called Reasons to Stay Alive, along with 5 other novels. So it felt very, how do I put this? Just dismissive, yeah, of mental health. I worded it better on my Instagram. And dealing with things that go along with depression, you can kind of read between the lines there. It just felt very dismissive of it in certain ways. And I felt like it maybe could have been managed better, but then again, I'm not sure what kind of book that would have been. It would have been a different book. But it was good. I liked it. Would I reread it? Probably. I liked it. It had its philosophical moments. I like a fiction book that has its philosophical moments, so I'm not complaining too much. It was a nice light read. It's like 300 pages. Really quick read. Okay, so then what am I currently reading? I am currently reading, so I finished watching the 3 Lord of the Rings in one weekend. They were the theatrical versions, so they were shorter. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read this series. So I'm reading The Fellowship of the Ring right now on my Kindle. I'm about 60-something% of the way through. So I'm on the like second part of the book. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's Tolkien's writing it's not too old worldy, whimsical that it's not relaxing to read, like it's a stressor. But it's just enough that it does kind of take you into a different world, a different time. It doesn't feel modern. Obviously, it's not a modern series, and obviously it's not a modern realistic plot. But really enjoying it so far. Yeah, my notes are writing isn't too stuffy. It's easy to read. I 100% ship Frodo and Sam. I watched those movies and I was like, there is no way they aren't madly and romantically in love with each other. There's no way. You can't tell me that they aren't. So I'm looking for things in the book as I read it. But yeah, I'm reading it on Kindle. I'm really enjoying it. I was going to show you. I always talk about my Kindle and I'm like, I don't bring it in here because it's my Kindle. I'm not going to show you. But here it is. I got a new case for it. So now it's nice to show off. And the case is nice because it has a stand. which I haven't tried to read while I knit with this, but I used to be able to read my Kindle while I knit. Just like simple projects, like just stockinette stitch. So we'll see if I can do that, but it also has a handle there too, which is really nice on your wrists, which is great if you use your wrists for a lot of stuff like typing and knitting and crocheting and reading. But yeah, so that is it for this episode. I tried to keep it on the shorter end. I think I did, considering everything we talked about, and I will be back hopefully in another month with more updates. However, I do have some plans for some other videos to drop this summer that aren't podcast related but are knitting related. And yeah, all right, well, I hope everyone has a great rest of your June. Thank you if you watched all the way to the end, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye.